was recovered from the bush where the criminals had dumped it. The speaker says the House is in deep grief over the death of the dynamic leader who had passion for his constituents, Kaduna State and Nigeria. He was chairman of the Committee for Local Government. He condoled the family of the lawmaker and also families of others who were killed on the highway by terrorists who invaded the highway in Monday night. The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission says that it has discovered $72.87 million stashed away by the former Minister of Petroleum Resources. The commission says that a former managing director of a bank, who is now the chairman of a bank holding, and another person are being questioned over two stashes of dollars that have been in contention. Over a sum of 153 million and another $150 million were all being subject of investigation. The $153 million has been recovered, while litigation is still ongoing with the $150 million related to bribe linked to Independent National Electoral Commission and the 2015 general election. Meanwhile, the case is before the Federal High Court in Abuja. There is all this other interesting story which is indicating that Nigeria has 30,000 primary healthcare centers across the country, but sadly, only about 20% of them, that is about 6,000, are in good working condition. Honorable Sergius Ogun, who moved the motion at the House of Representatives, lamented that 80% of the 30,000 primary healthcare centers are either ineffective in providing healthcare services delivery, or they are completely grounded and abandoned. The House Committee has appointed the Health Services Committee to investigate and report back to the House in 4 weeks. And Omicron, there are concerns that the ravaging Omicron COVID-19 may affect the 33rd edition of the African Cup of Nations, scheduled to hold early next year in Cameroon. The tournament was initially meant to hold in middle of 2021, but had to be shifted to January next year for climatic conditions. Following the outbreak of COVID-19 and the advent of the ravaging Omicron, the January 9 to February 6th time scheduled for the tournament may now have to suffer a setback. Officials of the Confederation of African Football are in a meeting, and there's every concern that they are worried that Cameroon does not seem to have the necessary COVID-19 protocol to curtail the ravaging Omicron virus. Nigeria is supposed to have been grouped in Group D and was to play Egypt, in fact, on January 9th. And the others in that group are Sudan and Guinea-Bissau. It's not certain now whether that tournament will hold or not.
Okay, there's this story of two medical doctors that died in Lafia, after treating a lady who perhaps may have a Lassa fever. And it's, in fact, the first time I read it on social media, I was taken aback. As a matter of fact, I didn't believe it in the first instance, right? So, but when we now have different, media houses, even the mainstream media carrying the story, then I had to believe that that was true. But I'm just wondering, the fact that Lassa fever has not been in the news lately, so I wonder how they contracted it, and they got them killed within a few days.
Lassa fever is rodent-related, and it got its name Lassa from where it was first discovered in a location in Borno State. But sadly, since its discovery and identification as a specific hemorrhagic fever known as Lassa fever, I don't think we already have a vaccine against it. Sadly, is highly contagious, and unfortunately, those doctors who were treating the patient apparently became a victim of it. And until protective devices and care is taken by health personnel, we will begin to have some of such unfortunate incidents. And I hear the doctors are still lamenting that hazard allowances it's still 5,000. Even if you are paid a hazard allowance of 50,000, if you are not too careful in handling such contagion, you will become a victim. So the protecting the health personnel is more critical as far as I'm concerned, so that in trying to help and provide cure, you don't become a victim.
That's right. No question about it. It's unfortunate one of the hazards that they face for highly infectious ailments such as hemorrhagic fevers, as you have mentioned. You have these unfortunate incidents. Similarly with Ebola.
Yes.
So sometimes it's the way the patients present themselves. A doctor cannot see you from 1 mile and assume that you have Lassa fever. It is in the course of examination and then taking your medical history and then of course having the course of treatment that some of these details would then begin to emerge. And unfortunately, the healthcare providers themselves might be infected before they know it. It's unfortunate, but there's every indication that this is a time for Lassa fever to be rife. We're in the dry season, and yes, we're in the dry season, so it's the use of precaution, of course, is advocated at this material time. Now, there's also another story. You don't have it on the front pages of the papers. It has to do with the coroner's inquest into the collapsed structure on Gerard Road in Ikoyi. On the 1st of November this year, there was a 21-story structure, one of 3 towers that came down. 46 persons died, and there were at least 15 survivors. The coroner's inquest has opened. And one of the testimonies, just by way of reporting, not necessarily for discussion, was that of the structural engineer. If you recall, after the structure came down, there was a publication in the social media, and it went viral, of the withdrawal of the services by the structural engineering consulting firm for that project because they said they couldn't guarantee the integrity of that particular structure. And a number of revelations that the chief of that firm made in the course of the inquest, including, according to the testimony, that they were concerned that they were not getting milestone approvals. Because each floor you make for such high-rise structures, you need to get the approvals.
Before you continue.
Before you continue. And that the developer was also the contractor and the builder. And we had discussed that on Good Morning Nigeria. And at some point when the concern was raised, according to the testimony, said, look, let the government agencies come. If they don't like it, they pull down the structure. And he says he cannot guarantee, he cannot speak on the integrity of the other 2 towers.
One of the survivors, of that incident, was actually a worker there, who said that, the pillars in the downstairs, he saw them cracked, and as a professional, he saw it and he felt that, look, that something is wrong. And he said, okay, that the builder asked them to, do some maintenance work on the pillar. But his concern was that, look, if this pillar that is downstairs, of course, it's carrying a lot of load. If it cracks at that point, that means that perhaps the cracking may have started up, down. He said that he now went outside to pick up some of the materials he was using to do the work when the building collapsed.
Well, when you see a pillar cracking, the pillar are supposed to be the columns, the weight that carry the weight of the structure.
Yes.
When it's beginning to crack, it tells you that the weight above the pillar, the column, is heavier than what it can carry. Exactly. It's simple logic.
Or that you are having some underground movement with regard to the foundation. That maybe. Well, I think one of the lessons, because I don't know, Kira, I wouldn't recall if you and I were on set, because upon the news breaking about that collapsed structure, we discussed structural integrity and construction. And the experts who were with us did say that, look, Nigerians should learn the proper ways of getting into property development. One, if you're a property developer, it means you are probably the financier. That doesn't make you the contractor. That doesn't make you the builder. That doesn't make you the structural engineer. It doesn't make you the electrical engineer. So, and it doesn't make you the architect. But you find a person who's a developer, I have the funds, and I'm saying the developer, I'll be giving instructions and counteracting the professional advice
Of the experts.
Of the experts.
And what is ironical about the whole situation is that the man concerned, that the owner of the structure, has been in estate development for a very long time, even from the UK. So he's not new in the business. So I wonder why, this one, got bad as it is. Because somebody who has had experience of developing, into estate development, must have had a good experience, and for a structural engineer to resign from an assignment that he's been doing based on the fact that he doesn't trust the integrity of the structure. Of course, there's a problem, and you can see what happened.
Even the information too that originally that structure was meant for 15 floors.
15 floors.
But later on they got approval whether that it was given or not. In fact, the officer who was in charge of that in the ministry was the first to have revealed that it was a 15th floor structure. He was not too sure how it got to 21, but he was suspended.
Yeah, as we said, there is a coroner's inquest that is ongoing, and what we just did now was to indicate the testimonies before the coroner's inquest.
The facts that are in the public domain.
And the facts that were already in the public domain. We're not seeking to interrogate the work of the coroner. Baya Chebe, deep thanks for being around today.
Thank you too.
See you again tomorrow. It's Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll be dealing with bullying in our schools.
The Digital Switchover project, which is commonly referred to as DSO, which entails television channels switching from analog to digital broadcasting. It's one of the biggest projects embarked upon by this administration. Branded as Free TV, offers its viewers about 60 digital channels, including sports, music, movies, and news. The federal government has licensed about 23 set-top box manufacturers. 7 of them have self-production, employing several thousands of people. We've made it now compulsory for all stations in Nigeria to only broadcast productions made in Nigeria for products which are produced in Nigeria.
Dialogue, empathy, love, and unity. These are vital components of nation building.
For all to be well, we appeal that we should refrain from volatile, provocative, inciting messages and language.
Let's build and not destroy.
We are all Nigerians. Against all odds, we shall and must remain united. We may have our challenges, our problems, and setbacks. However, together we shall overcome them all. What doesn't break us shall make us stronger. This is the mindset that shall bring peace, progress, and prosperity to our beloved country. Do not let tribal and religious sentiments govern how you think, act, or feel. Don't be influenced by those who want to destroy our precious national unity. Everybody who is a Nigerian is your brother and your sister. This is the mindset of the new Nigeria. It is also the mindset that we must all adopt. Let us support each other in creating the Nigeria of our dreams. This message is from the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
Norwich City are desperate for another 3 points in their battle for survival in the Premier League. Can they cause an upset against the Hammers? This Saturday, it's West Ham United versus Norwich City on the Premier League Live, showing on the network service of the NTA from 3:30 p.m. The Premier League Live is brought to you by Baba Ijebu and powered by Integral.
All right, it is still Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. As a prompt for our conversation this morning on addressing bullying in schools, let's take This background report as put together by our correspondent, Abdul Jibril.
Disturbing images there of the alleged bullying of Sylvester Oromoni that recently made headlines across the country and beyond. Sadly, the 12-year-old later died from injuries sustained from the alleged battery of school bullies, triggering mass outcry and condemnation. Relevant authorities are currently prosecuting the case, and President Muhammadu Buhari has also read the Riot Act towards ensuring that all culprits in the tragedy are brought to justice. In December last year, the hashtag Justice for Don Davis trended as activists demanded authorities to ensure justice is served over the alleged bullying of Don Davis, an 11-year-old junior secondary school student. Studies on bullying in Nigerian schools reveal that Sylvester Oromoni and Don Davis cases are just a few of several cases of bullying, particularly in secondary schools. Some experts note that because of the culture of silence on the part of the victims, many cases of bullying have sailed below the radar, making it difficult to tackle the bullying culture. This, they maintain, has led to widespread bullying and harassment in most schools, particularly boarding schools, but not much has been done to stem the tide. They also insist that bullying in schools seems to be an acceptable culture, which unfortunately has sent some students to their early graves, while some have sustained lifetime injuries both physically and mentally, as well as post-traumatic stress disorder and low self-esteem. Why is the country currently witnessing alarming cases of bullying? Who is to blame for the menace? The child, parents, or society? What treatments or counseling are available for victims? And what must be done to curb this culture of bullying in Nigerian schools? These and more will engage guests on the program shortly.
Well, thank you very much, Abdul Jibril, for that background. With us in the studios to discuss the issues around bullying in our schools, let's welcome Mrs. Charity Inalego. She's the principal Pace Setters Academy in Guzape, and Guzape, of course, is one of the suburbs in Abuja. Mrs. Inalego, pleasure to have you with us on the program this morning.
Thank you very much, sir. Good morning, NTA. Good morning, Nigerians.
Okay, we also would like to welcome a child psychologist. His name is Thank God Ocheho. Thank God, delighted to have you this morning.
Yeah, good morning, sir. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone.
And from our Kaduna studio, we have Professor Hawa Evelyn Yusuf, Professor of Criminology and Gender Studies, Kaduna State University. Good morning, madam, and welcome to the program.
Good morning, Nigeria.
And also via Zoom, we have Chief Adeolu Ogumbanjo. Adeolu Ogumbanjo is the Deputy National President, National Parent Teacher Association of Nigeria, NAPTAN. Also joining us via Zoom is Professor Hope Egara, former Commissioner for Higher Education, Delta State, and Professor of English, University of Lagos. Good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning.
All right. Once again, our pleasure to have all the guests with us on the program this morning. Listening to our backgrounder by our correspondent Abdul Jibril, it did indicate that bullying appears to be a culture in our schools. But we have seen lately the harsh consequences of bullying with regard to what occurred at the Dowen College in Lekki Phase 1 in Lagos. Beginning with the Deputy National President of the Parent Teacher Association in the country, that's Chief Adeolu Ogumbanjo. Chief Adeolo Ogunbanjo, from the perspective of parents, what do we know about the state of bullying, if you like, in our schools? What are your words? What are your children reporting back to you?
Thank you very much. Good morning, Nigerians. I must say that bullying is not new, but this extreme bullying, I think, is the problem as we speak. It's a big challenge. Way back in our days in the secondary schools, I remember when we were given provisions and all that, mommy and daddy will give you some gari, some tins of milk and all that. And then when you now get back to school, in the boarding school, some seniors, these are secondary schools then, some seniors will just, give me 2 tins of milk, give me some gari. That is part of bullying. And there you are, because you are a junior student, just coming up, maybe class 1 then you have to give them. Otherwise, you'll be punished. I think that is some sort of mild bullying then. But these days, it's now getting, to the extreme, by making these students, being beaten, and then to ensure that you join. Those days, even when you are not giving them, all they do is, kneel down there, raise up your hand. No beating. Those days, if you refuse to give them. And then we had housemasters, that you will go and report to, who will curb it. Though, it depends again on, the side at which the housemaster is looking at it. He may say, okay, give him a bit of the gari, but once the senior, don't come again. So I think from that point on, bullying had been there, all the time. Some form of mild bullying. But today is getting to the extreme situation where they are now forced and beaten and, all sorts of activities on a child that is refusing to join them.
All right, thank you indeed. And let's return to our Abuja studio here, where we have Mrs. Charity Inalego, who is a principal, Presetters Academy, Guzape. Well, madam, let's come to you because you are currently a principal of a school, and on a daily basis you have to deal with today's secondary school students. What are you getting? What kind of information are you getting? Reports from students of your school, for instance, in terms of bullying, whether mild bullying or extreme bullying?
Okay, thank you very much, sir. From my school, just like the earlier speaker laid the foundation, bullying is almost everywhere, but there are degrees of bullying. In my school, it's a zero tolerance for bullying. So we try as much as possible to, stop it, to nib it at the bud. We try to inculcate in the children the spirit of empathy and kindness. And we give the children all the confidence they need to speak up. So in my school, I would say there are mild cases here and there, but because of the enabling environment, the safe environment where children are allowed to speak up, we teach children to be up speakers. They speak up and things are corrected immediately. We've not had severe cases, and the rule is clear. Assuming there are severe cases, we don't hope to have such, but if any such arises, like I said, it's a zero tolerance for bullying. So such students, already their parents know from the time they are being admitted, they sign the undertaking and all that. So the rule is clear. Such child will be expelled.
Do you run a boarding facility?
Yes, we run a boarding facility. Okay. And, before bullying escalates, it starts from the very little behaviors of excluding people from groups, allowing children to do things on their own and all of that. In my school, Pacesetters, we have a very strong monitoring team. we hardly allow children to do things on their own. Like, it's not like we are trying to, intrude into their privacy or some sort of things. But as much as possible, we supervise. Our supervisory team is very strong. We make sure that, first of all, we engage them in positive and constructive activities, healthy activities, and then there are always adults to supervise. At that point of supervision, you find out that some children will still want to do one or two things, but because of the presence of the adult and the fact that we've taught children to be up speakers, to speak up when there are issues, you see that cases don't arise as much. And then even if they arise, we tackle it immediately. Okay. We don't ignore situations like that.
Well, thank you, Mrs. Ntalive. We'll return to you in the course of the conversation to interrogate other aspects in terms of school management. Let's get Professor Hope Igaga one more time. We earlier introduced him. He's with us via Zoom. Professor Hope Igaga, are we having an epidemic of what Chief Adeolu Ogunbanjo appropriately described as extreme bullying in our schools?
Good morning, Nigeria. Thanks for having me on this program. I take a different view about bullying. When someone says that extreme bullying is a new thing, it's always been there. What has happened now is that it has come to the public space. It's always been there. If you want to talk about a recent time, and then you say it's just this year or 2 years or 3, 4, 5 years ago, and that would not be correct. Bullying has been there. I could say in the last 25, 26, 30 years, extreme bullying. I was senior prefect in a school, and I witnessed bullying as a senior prefect. There was one that was near fatal at that time. You see, there is bullying, there's always been bullying. And it takes different forms, as the vice president had said. It takes different forms: extortion, beating, trauma, all right? Where the victim is afraid of the bully. The victim is afraid to tell the parents. So fear is a tool used by the bully. I did an essay on this, on the Oromoni experience, and I got all kinds of reactions. Let me give you one. A former student of a federal government college in Benin sent me a message. She left secondary school some 15 years ago, where she said she was being bullied by a senior for a lesbian relationship. And when she declined, the students started picking on her. She then decided to report to the hostel master. What did she say? She said, "Oh, don't worry. You will soon become a senior student." She was in JSS 3. All right. Once she mentioned it to her mother took an on-the-spot decision. You are not going back to school, to that school, and changed that school. So there are other stories. What the schools should do is not just to say we don't tolerate it. Let them create private channels where students and pupils, sometimes day students are bullied as well. They should create channels where students can speak up without being discovered, so to speak. And there should be special protection for students. Parents should listen to their children. If your child tells you, "Daddy, Mommy, I don't want to go to that school," sit the child down and ask why. Don't force the child to go to school. So there is extreme bullying right now, and it's always been there. We must take action as we speak. It is going on as we speak. Find out from children. Once you assure them that they'll be protected or they won't go back to that school, they will open up. And they will tell you, some of these children take a cue from what their parents do. Their parents bully their housemates, bully everybody around them. So they also look down. A teacher told me of a very terrible experience of a girl in a private school here. This was in a classroom where he was trying to chastise the student, and she was just indifferent. Another teacher then invited him, my friend, just leave that girl alone. Her parents are well connected. They've done X, Y, Z. For her, whether you pass her or not, she will pass the SS3. So there's collision sometimes between the school authorities, teachers, and the students. In fact, I called for an open investigation by former teachers of schools, students, by the House of Reps. They should do that. And you will hear stories so that we prevent the next death.
Well, I think, Kingsley, he's raised a very, a critical point here with respect to the collision or whatever between students and, of course, teachers. Here we have a story from him where a student reported to a teacher and he said, look, don't worry, you will soon become a senior student. And that is appalling. And this is, why, it's important for us to, engage in an elaborate conversation on this matter to see how we can get around it. Thank God, Ocheho, you're a psychologist. What gives a child that idea of lording it over another? Is it as a matter of, poor home training? Is it, a kind of, gangsterism belonging to a group or something, social superiority among the fellow students? So what really leads to this bullying thing?
Okay. Thank you very much. Good morning, Nigerians. Basically, there are different factors responsible to why you see a child who wants to bully another. Well, upbringing can be part of it, but first, let's look at the desire for power. One of the components of bullying in terms of the definition has to do with imbalance of power. It means that somebody has a power over another person. That is why he's bullying the person. So the power can be physical, it can be positional, it can be even economic power. So that is one reason. Look at the example you gave the other time, that when the student went to report to the teacher, and the teacher said that don't worry, he's still going to be become a senior. So the concept of leadership is not well taught. So when they become a senior, or when they are given that leadership opportunity, they see it as an opportunity to be able to lord it over the other student, that's the younger junior student, not understanding that it's an opportunity for them to serve. So that's one reason, because a lot of them desire power. They've gone through it. So that traumatic experience that they went through as a result of them being bullied, you see the pattern continues, because in their own world and worldview, they understand that this is how it is. And that's how culture is spread. Because when you see, for instance, your father bullied the teacher, come to school and bully the teacher, the child sees it. The parent bullies the father bullies the wife, or the wife bullies the father, the husband. The child sees it. The father and parent bullies the driver, the nannies, the security. The child sees it. So gradually it becomes a culture, and that becomes the reality of that child. So when the child have gone through a traumatic experience like that, maybe in the kind of environment you grew up in is so aggressive, violence is the norm, or within the neighborhood, the child sees these things as the norms within that environment. And when the child, because the child have not also been ill from that process, he grew up, and when he have the opportunity, he realized that he's going to use that opportunity to be able to bully, the people that he have power over. So there are different factors, and some people can just be revenge. Because they've gone through that experience before, and they say, oh, I'm going to take, when I have the opportunity to do this, I'm going to take it up over those that I have the opportunity to lead. So I think there are basically different factors that are responsible for a child becoming a bully, actually.
Thank God. Thank you for your initial comments. Let's go over to our Cardinal Network Center. Professor Hawa Yusuf. Professor Hawa Yusuf, let's have also your opening salvo on this subject matter. I'm sure for those who were in boarding school, you would have experienced some of the mad bullying that Chief Ogumbanjo himself referred to earlier. But the extreme bullying and the consequences, especially also, some people say, with the rise of cultism, even in secondary schools, but this is some great cause for concern. Do you agree?
Yeah, I I do agree, and I would like to toe the line of Professor Hope on saying that bullying is not new. Excessive bullying is not new. For those of us who went to boarding schools, we grew up seeing people bullying us, and we in turn bully others when we get the opportunity. So bullying, excessive bullying is not new. And it is very important that we understand that there is the need to create safe spaces in school where children can voice out. The conspiracy of silence over bullying is even being encouraged by teachers and leaders in the school. It is very important for us to know that the escalating rate needs to be curbed, and we need to take very serious action. Bullying connotes the perseverance of some imbalance in power. Some people feel that they have powers above others, and then for some people, like Thank God said, it is vengeance. I was bullied, I have to bully someone. And people give you that feeling that wait for your time. When it is your time, then you can bully. And this is what has made it to continue. Like in the case of Sylvester, if somebody had listened, if somebody had taken a close look, perhaps we wouldn't have lost him. And what we can do to ensure that we are able to curb these things in our schools is to put in place proper check. Our principal here this morning said they have a very strong mechanism, and I want to ask, what happens after light out? Because a lot of these things happen after light out, and usually after light out, the monitors themselves, the supervisory team, would have gone to sleep. So there is the need for us to begin to reorient our children right from home, because again, bullying can be transferred from home. It may not be happening in school, but it's happening at home. And because it is happening at home, the children transfer it to school, especially when at home the child is not allowed to speak. So we must put in a concerted effort to create safe spaces where these children can talk. And when I say safe spacing, like Professor Hope said, these safe spaces are where these children can report without it necessarily coming back to them as the ones that have reported, without necessarily exposing the identity of that person who has said, I am being bullied. Because the rate at which we are going, I feel so bad about it, and I think it's alarming. Like Karen said, there's a need for us to continue discussing concertedly to ensure that children begin to get better orientation. The socialization process of the child needs to be watched.
Okay, madam. Thank you indeed. Let's return to Chief Ogubanjo, who opened this conversation this morning. Sir, from what Mrs. Charity Nalegu told us earlier on, her school has a mechanism, to monitor students on 24/7 basis. Not when the light is out, because when the light is out, everybody goes to sleep. All right. Now, what can really be done in today's current schools? Because the experience of the Darwin College did indicate, however, that this young boy who died out of as a result of bullying had the same experience the previous year, according to the young man who claimed that he was his godfather, or rather his school father, right? So it means that it was continuous, and because it was not properly checked or monitored, that was why what happened. Now, I want to find out from you whether it is possible for school management to ensure that whoever is a housemaster or a prefect should be held responsible when a bully is reported, what I mean here is that if someone is bullied and he reported and nothing is done about it, can we hold the person in charge of supervising that hostel or dormitory, as the case may be, responsible for what happened?
Thank you very much. Let me toe the line of the madam that just spoke last. I think a lot of orientation needs to be done by us parents. I must say that the moment you give them the proper orientation from home, that look, you are going to the boarding school, whatever happens, please ensure that you speak out. If any senior boy, is doing whatever that is wrong, please speak to your teacher or speak to your housemaster. That is taking it from home. They say charity begins at home. So the moment the child, understands this, he takes down that to school. Now, if he now gets to school, the housemasters, they are our gods in those days in the boarding houses. The next set of gods are the seniors. So, but the moment anything happens and you report to the housemaster takes it up. It has to, in our days. But these days, perhaps the housemaster, some of them, a percentage of them, may be, by some of these cultist students who now, connive with in concert with the housemaster, maltreat these boys and encourage bullying. However, if the housemaster is made to be responsible for whatever wrong that is in the house or in their dormitories or hostels, then bullying will reduce. And the school authorities must also orientate the student to ensure that, look, when anything happens to you, please report to your housemaster or report to maybe vice principal administration, vice principal academics. Things like that can be introduced in our schools. Thank you.
Chief Adeolu Ogunbanjo, I still want to stay with you because the line you were already taking now also provokes the question about the widely held view that parents and guardians in recent years have tended to outsource the socialization of their children solely to educational institutions. Parents and guardians do not appear to have enough time to raise their children at home properly before sending them out to schools. And the result is the maladjustment we now find manifesting in bullying, or the extreme type of it, that has resulted in the death of the young man at Dowen College.
Yes, I must agree with you that a considerable percentage of us parents are not particularly up to what we should be doing on our children. Let me use your word, we outsource the care. Look, go to the boarding school and then we take it up from there. That is where the orientation now comes in, and it has to be a concerted effort by the ministry and the parents, by the Ministry of Education, all the 36 states, the federal government, because this is getting abnormal. It is getting to an extreme situation where, you can imagine the pain Sylvester suffered before he died. It's rather unfortunate, but I think we must, get into a concerted effort by everyone to ensure that parents now get alive to their responsibility to ensure that they orientate, they educate, they enlighten their children. Look, this is what to do. We must not, jettison whatever that we should do on our children to outsource it to, the house mistresses and teachers in the schools. I think we have a lot to do as well. And the ministry, and particularly now, is the time to now start, ensuring that enlightenment programs, to ensure that parents, live up to the expectation of training their children, then we pass it on to the school and we continue from there.
All right, back here in the studio, Mrs. Charity in Nalego. Every school has a parent-teacher association. And of course, from time to time, the school authority holds meetings with these parents. And in your school or elsewhere, what are usually the agenda for conversation during such meetings? Do you bring up an issue of bullying in schools? And if some pupils or students reported bullying to their parents and parents come to the meeting with such information, how does the school handle such matters?
Thank you very much, sir. At PTAs is much expected most times, and it's obtainable that parents and teachers discuss the issue of bullying. Now, when we talk of bullying in schools, you cannot take away the place of parents, like most of the speakers have said. So it's usually a time for the school to remind the parents of their roles. And then it's also a time for the school to hear from the parents, the feedbacks they receive from children. And normally, there are consensus on how to tackle the challenges. We come to agreements, we map out plans on how to tackle these issues. And then we remind parents of the consequences of bullying. By the time you remind them, it helps them to go back and do their jobs at home. And then for the school, someone said, asked what happens after lights out. Well, in my school, we have teachers on duty at all times. We work around the clock. We have teachers on day shifts, even matrons and patrons on day shifts, and we have those on night shift. So if your night shift, is expected that you must have rested during the daytime, and at night you should be alert. They move around with their torchlights, they see what is happening. So PTA usually is a time for parents and teachers to meet and talk about issues like this. And like I said, we normally map out plans on how to tackle it, how we remind parents of their responsibilities, because of course, the home is the first place of education. Education cannot be left to schools alone. There must be synergy between the home and the school in tackling the issue of bullying. And so PTA is a platform for such bond building. It's a time to build synergy between the home and the school. And usually the result is positive. We're able to address certain issues as it concerns parents, as it concerns the children, and as it concerns the school. So normally, with that synergy, with that bond between the teachers, the administrators, and the parents, we have, like I said earlier, very minimal cases of bullying because we try to nip it at the bud.
All right, thank you, Charity Nalego. Back to Thank God Ocheho. Thank God. In psychology, there is the doctrine, if you like, of individual differences. Sure. We're all different personality types. And the bully is one such type. So it would appear, as some persons would argue, that almost invariably, no matter what you try to do, that individual ingrained personality will manifest if, of course, the environment is conducive for it to flourish. So, what should be the disposition of others around a manifestly serious situation of a bully, amongst others, or a group of bullies, either one, as a target of the bully itself, or two, as a supervisor of the students, whether as a housemaster or as a teacher? How do you deal with bullies?
Okay, let me quickly say this before I address the question that you asked. The first thing is that we must understand that nobody is born a bully. You talked about the environment, that there's a way even an individual have the tendency, the environment can be able to will nurture it because of the kind of environment the person lives in. I think most time we don't really do a root cause analysis of the problem, because most of what I'm still hearing when a lot of people talk about this issue is let's keep doing orientation, more like sensitization, let's put structure and policy in place. All these are good because they are part of the interventions. But we've not been able to go back again to see how we address this thing. Some of those people, like I said, are going through a traumatic experience that they require some form of intervention. Now, even if you put those structure in place, it might not happen in your school, but once they leave that environment where they know they are no longer controlled, you see that that act is also being expressed. So most time we try to use control, whether external control in form of shouting, beating, giving consequences, or putting policy in place, or internal control using the tool like fear, guilt, shame, to be able to control the child. At that point, what we are doing is basically to condition the child, to be able to behave in a certain way. But the child have not gotten that understanding of what it means, the implication of being a bully. So in addressing your question, what do they need to do for you as a teacher, a parent, or caregiver, or you have a responsibility to monitor the child? I think the first thing, like I always tell schools, is this: you need to start building a trauma-sensitive schools. A schools where even the teachers understand what it means to be trauma-sensitive, what they do, what they say. Most times that we talk about even this bullying, some of them learning from the teachers. When the teacher bullied the student in the classroom, they all see it. And they say, okay, when I have the opportunity also to have power, I'm going to do the same thing. So that trauma-sensitive environment from the gate, the entrance of the school. In fact, even before some students are admitted to school, there's what called behavioral profiling. You want to profile them, and also the teachers, not just the students. You want to profile them to know their different their behaviors, their temperament, their personality before they get into the school system. But I think for teachers, we have the responsibility, and also parents, to be able to see how we create, like Prof mentioned earlier on, a safe space. And that safe space needs to be non-judgmental, because at times we say we create safe space, but the kind of space that we create, the students are also being traumatized in the process. So it has to be a non-judgmental safe space that we create for them. Also, their response to it is that, of course, if you have the opportunity to be able to give consequences, you give consequences. But beyond consequences, a child needs to go through that healing process in case he's traumatized, and that's what is leading him to be bullying other people. Or we need to put some intervention in place. You see quite a number of schools, they say they have counselor, but how effective it is, the work of a counselor. Some of them just put a counselor there just to tick the box to say that we have counselor. So you see, this is a concerted effort from different factors that you respond. Your response, one, should be in a professional way. Two, your response also, of course, there should, like I said, there should be consequences, but beyond consequences, you need to understand the child. Why is this child behaving the way he or she is behaving? There must be a reason. You understand? A lot of people don't do that root cause analysis. Most time we just react. And after the reaction, everybody go back again. It happens, we come out to social media, we react. After the reaction, everybody go back again. So there is no long-term plan. There is no strategic plan to say, how are we going to solve this problem? And not just solving the problem, looking at the symptom, but addressing it from the root. And I think that's the responsibility every one of us need to engage in so that we can solve the problem.
Can you put this in the context of a school environment? Let's say we have 500 students in the school, we have X number of masters, and there is a head teacher or a school principal. Not everyone is a bully. You probably just have a few of them who are bullies. And of course, some persons would say, in the case of extreme bullying, that there is a relationship between aggression, which can be an innate tendency, and bullying. How do you, as a target of bullying, how do you respond? There is a culture of silence. You say, go and report me to any housemaster, you will see what will happen to you at the close of school.
Okay, so like I said, I always like to go back to issues, addressing it from the root. How did the culture of silence start? So there is a culture, especially in our climate. You grow up in a particular family, and when you see maybe your parent doing something that is wrong, and you want to tell him or her respectfully, they shut you down. And in the home, you can't even talk to your parent. The ability to be assertive is weakened. And you go to school, the teacher see himself or herself as a mini god. So the student cannot question. You know, when they question, the teachers want to put the student down. I remember it has happened to me when I was teaching in the university. I realized that I told my student that, oh, I won't be coming to class on a particular day, you know, for lecture. And one of them asked me why. You know, I wanted to react because I was, in my mind, I was saying, who gave you the audacity to ask me?
You felt
You
challenged.
understand? Yeah. Who gave me the audacity to ask me why? You know, but I now thought about it again. So he just asked a simple question, why? I should have responded, you know. But so we, as a teacher, we create that kind of environment. There are times, even in school those days, you want to go into your lecturer's office or your teacher's office, you have to pray or do the sign of the cross before you can enter the office. You understand? Because you are afraid. And you now get to maybe your religious center again. You can't question your pastor or your imam, even while they are doing the wrong thing. So we create an environment where our ability to be assertive is weakened. So when the child is bullied, what gives you that assurance that the child will be able to have that confidence to be able to speak out? Because even the self-confidence is already damaged. So these are the things that we also need to start looking at from the home to the school to the society at large, so that when children, there are a lot of children that have been sexually abused, they can't open up to talk because they are afraid. And you know the perpetrator always use the tool of fear, you know, and guilt or shame to be able to control the child. And they understand this thing very well. So the strength of the perpetrator is the ignorance of the child.
All right. This is indeed the psychology of the entire situation, you know, because if a child cannot report that he's bullied, then the bullying continues. And of course, the perpetrator will see that as a weakness, and that will continue. All right, sir. Let's go to Professor Ehaha. Professor Ehaha, in your opening contribution, you made it clear that bullying has always been there in schools, but those days it appeared to be mild rather than what we're seeing today. And to put it in the right perspective, today we have more of organized bullying. We have group bullying. What happened to Sylvester was a group bullying. They were wooing him to become part of their cult group, and he perhaps refused to do that if the story we had is correct. Now, how can a school management deal with the issue of cultism or groupings in school, which of course is more is more in the privately owned schools than government schools? But we also know that in some government schools there are groups or cult groups. It may not be cult per se, but there are groups. These are groups that seek for power. These are groups that want to subdue the other persons, who are weaker. And the problem now is, how does the school authority deal with this kind of groupings in schools who are perpetuating bullying, among the students?
Thank you. It's my view that if the school authorities are really interested in finding out gangs and groups in the schools, they would really succeed in doing so. All they need to do is to put their ears on the ground, or put their ears to the ground. They will get adequate information from students in confidence. It is sad that the cultism that permeated tertiary institutions have also extended to primary schools, some that don't even have boarding facilities. All right, so cultism, yes, has become, has provided a platform for some of these people to operate. Some are not cults, they're just gangs. Some are just friends, people of like minds, 4, 5, 6 who came together, and they bullied the junior ones. And it's just to exercise power, all right? When they extort the junior ones, it is not because they lack, it is to show that they are powerful. I think that if the school authorities set in motion the machinery, because there should be different levels. People in Form 1, there are some teachers that they trust. Some hostel masters are not trusted by the students. Yes, they are the house masters, quite right, but they are not trusted. there are some teachers that students can actually relate with. All right. Now, parents have a duty in this regard. All right. Both in educating your child not to be a bully, or that if you are being bullied, you must speak up. All right. Then there should be random inspection. When we're in the hostel, sometimes about 12 midnight, the hostel master in our days never lived with us. Okay, he lived in town just around the corner. So he would come into the hostel then to see if anybody had broken the lights out rule. Okay, but at such times, you may not discover bullying. There used to be official bullying, what they called fagging. If for those of us who were in the secondary schools, boarding house system in the 70s, for junior students, when they came in from one, all right, they said, we want to fag you, want to cut your tails. And they'll be subjected to all kinds of indignities. Some of those students will now adopt a school father. The school father then used to protect that child, that student. These days, it's different. Why is it that bullying has taken a new dimension? There is a very high level of bullying in the country. And these students see there's a very high level of bullying, official bullying from government, official bullying from institutions, from the police, from everywhere. So bullying, impunity has become a way of life. So it is not just a question of preaching to these students that bullying is wrong. We should set the proper example. For parents, I would say that, I will repeat this, it's very important that you connect with your child. It's also very important that you don't create wrong values. Another example a teacher gave, there was a son of a minister, a serving minister at that time in his class. At 1 p.m., he would just walk up to the teacher, I'm leaving, my driver has come. What happened to parental authority? What happened to teacher authority? Come on, sit down. I mean, teachers had that control over us when we were in school. I don't know, the current environment seems to have deprived teachers that authority, that moral authority to speak to a child, to speak to a student. This is it. You must go this way. And we used to comply. But the students challenge the teachers. Some of the teachers don't have the liver. If you saw that video, finally, let me make that point. That video of concerned teachers, parents, where a teacher said he had been in Darwin College as counselor, and he had pointed out some of these inadequacies. They wouldn't listen, so he resigned and moved on to another school. Then a parent erupted. You resigned, and that's why my child also suffered, and that's why Sylvester has died. When a teacher is in a place, those who are assertive, those who want to raise the point, and nobody listens to them, for the security of their job, for tenure, they move on. So a lot depends on management. The life of a child is more important than the image of a school. We don't want to give the impression that bullying is taking place here. No. One child is more important than all your schools. That's my last message on this. Thank you.
All right, Professor Hope-Iwaga, thank you very much there for the points that you have raised, and indeed the other guests. We're going to have to take a short break now. When we return from the break, we continue with the conversation.
19, that is the black swan of the century, has actually hit the whole world very hard, even the strongest of economies, and Nigeria was not spared. But due to the proactive stance and steps that the president has taken, we've been able to come out quickly. The president has consistently said we must invest in infrastructure, even as we're investing in human capital, that we must invest in infrastructure, because at the end of the day, that is what will bring about a sustainable economic growth. So the president has given us our directive. He has said you must make sure you pay salaries and pay pensions, but you also make sure that the critical projects of roads, railway, airports, bridges, major infrastructure that are meant to drive the growth of the economy, that we consistently invest in them, even if we have to continue to borrow to do so.
This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Nigerian youths are about the greatest asset the country has at the moment. It is therefore not surprising that the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari is strategically responding to the yearnings of the youth through multiple projects and programs. Youth entrepreneurship support years by Bank of Industry, the Youth Investment Fund by the CBN, and several other conditional cash transfer programs. Recruitment of 774,000 social workers, majority of whom are youths, and so many other projects that are beneficial to youths directly or indirectly. If the administration can do all this, definitely with a degree of patience and time, it can achieve more. Nigerian youths must come together to say no to terrorism, no to vandalism, and no to all disruptive tendencies. Hashtag Youth for Greater Nigeria, pacifying the youths, unifying the nation.
Finally, the hero of Nigeria's democracy has arrived. He shall usher us into a new phase of development, peace, and prosperity. He is the father of the new Nigeria, His Excellency President Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR. Welcome to another season of giving Nigerians hope yet again. We are sure of a great future for both ourselves and generations yet unborn. We look forward to your leading us as a nation into our manifest destiny. Though the challenges against us as a people are many, we know that your leadership shall set us on the right path to our greatness. A new dawn beckons on us all, and having you as our president is a precursor to this. Thank you for believing in Nigeria. This message is from the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
Norwich City are desperate for another 3 points in their battle for survival in the Premier League. Can they cause an upset against the Hammers? This Saturday, it's West Ham United versus Norwich City on the Premier League Live, showing on the network service of the NTA from 3:30 p.m. The Premier League Live is brought to you by Baba Ijebu and powered by Integral.
All right, you're welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria live on NTA's network service. Now, just following from some of the points that have been raised, I am tempted to go back to Chief Adeolu Ogunbanjo of the Parent Teacher Association of Nigeria as the Deputy National President. Chief Ogunbanjo, again, let's look at the ledger side of parents and guardians. And part of the way to examine this, I would say, as a preface, would be from your associational interactions. Do we have more cases of extreme bullying in public schools or in private schools? And allied to that will also be the view that was held in the past that, of course, if you're in a private school, you were privileged. And privilege is supposed to confer some level of comfort, and therefore there will be less tendency towards bullying. But Dowen College is an expensive school in Lekki Phase 1, and we have seen what has happened. Those being a private school now confer some immunity, as it were, from bullies and bullying. And the other leg of the bullying is what Professor Yogaga was talking about, or one of the other guests, if I remember now, to say that, look, my driver has come. A class is still going on, and a pupil or a student stands up to walk up to the teacher and announce when the school hasn't closed that, look, my driver has come and I have to leave. Why are we this way, and what can be done?
Thank you very much, sir. I must say that to answer, putting it succinctly, it is obviously more in private schools, bullying. Apparently because in government secondary schools, teachers, because they are, representing government, it's a government school, they normally report quickly, either go to the police and all that, because they are not paying, to maintain, I mean, there is no proprietor or something that, you know, they have to pay to make profits. So it's a government school, and then when things like that do happen, some teachers take it upon themselves, some public school teachers take it upon themselves to actually report to the police or to the authorities. Because I know they do have some compliance and monitoring department of the ministry that perhaps, you know, apart from, you know, having this administration VP or the academics and all of that, and then the counselors too, you know, they play a part in government schools. However, they may not be as effective as they should have been. But in private schools, of course, the proprietor has, you know, to take more students, and the more students he makes, the more profit. The more students he takes, the more profit he makes. But beyond that is the fact that even when some of these things do happen, they don't want to lose students. So all they do is try to plead or counsel or whatever, rather than, you know, mute a serious disciplinary action towards these erring students. Again, sir, I must say that we parents have a lot to do in taking care of our children. Imagine that one that the session is still, the session is still on, and the driver comes, and then the student says, sorry, I have to go. That is indiscipline. That is, crass indiscipline. It's unfortunate that that sort of thing. Can the driver wait until school finishes? He now has the effrontery to go to the teacher. That is absurd. So parents should also try and ensure that they tell their students to behave and listen to whatever rules and regulation the school has. And schools must also have some of these basic rules. Once you are not complying, of course, you are showed the way out. So we must start to really, from home, train up our children properly, ensure that you spend some time with them by, either mother or father, depending on which one has the time, to ensure that at least we give them some little orientation from home before we pass them on to the schools. Then the school, of course, must draw up some regulations, particularly to ensure that whenever anything wrong is happening to you, please speak out. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, let's return to Kaduna, where we have Professor Hawa Ibn Yusuf, Professor of Criminology. We're already winding down on this edition of the program, and I'd like you to let us know how school authorities can step in and nip in the bud any bullying activity in the school early enough to ensure that what happened at Darwin College does not repeat itself in any of our schools. And the last speaker did mention here that from analysis available that we have more bullying in private schools than the public schools.
I'll tell you why we have more bullying in private schools than we have in the public schools. It's very clear. It's a two-way traffic thing. Parents want to tell the whole world that my child is in the most expensive school. So even when the child is reporting bullying, they are not quick to withdraw the child from that school. And then the second way is that the school do not want to lose clients. And as a result of that, they don't report to parents of children who are bullies. They don't take immediate action on children who are bullies. And as a result of that, the children go back to school, stay together, and the bully continues bullying. And that's why we have gotten to like in the case of Sylvester, it's very clear. It is said that that child had reported the previous year that he was being bullied, but yet he was still taken back to that school. And the school did not do anything. There is the need for for parents to put in place, that's going to your second question, which is how do we nip this in the bud? There should be that deliberate attempt by both, by the school's authority to say that, look, this school does not tolerate bullying, and no matter how much you are paying us, we can't afford to have you in our school if you are a bully. Let it be clear, because the profit you make, now what extent is the profit that has been made from Sylvester's school fees, for instance? We've lost the child. There is the need for us to stop encouraging these things to go up by not being able to assertively say, look, this child is a bully, we don't want him in our school, regardless of how much you're going to lose. It is not worth the life of any child. Thank you.
Professor Hawa Evelyn, thank you very much for your point. I just want to go back to Professor Hope Igaga, who was Commissioner for Higher Education in Delta State. Prof, tell us something. I know that we're dealing, in a sense, with basic education, or some would say secondary education. But the view has also been expressed that there appears to be insufficient or inadequate oversight by the education authorities over private schools. While you have, I don't know what titles they go by now, assistant education inspectors visiting public schools, it appears to be that, okay, private schools, you are running your business, there's little interference. If we're going to get to solve this problem, at least reduce it significantly, and some of the measures that have been suggested there are put in place, what would you further recommend in terms of increased oversight? Look, do you have a guidance and counselor, a guardian and counselor in your school? Can we see your records? Can we inspect your hostels and be sure that indeed you have the right number of students per room, and then interview your students? What can the education authorities do in the various states?
Thank you. No doubt, the state government, being the supervisory body over education, has a role to play in terms of monitoring. I do know that in the ministries of education across the country, there is monitoring units, all right? Or there are monitoring units who go to schools, usually during the day, all right? And for the public schools, their interest is in the facilities, teachers come to school. For the public schools, what's the quality of their infrastructure, teaching aids? Yes, they do that. So they need to be more involved. They need to be above board. They need to show more commitment. If you want to catch a monkey, behave like a monkey. Inspectors used to come outside official hours. In other words, when you are not inspecting them. An inspector who says, I'm coming to your school tomorrow, he certainly is not coming to inspect you. He's just putting you on notice so that you'll be ready to receive them. All right, pat my back, I'll pat your back. So the ministries of education ought to do more. Now that we have identified bullying, cultism, you know, when I was in government, it was reported, I was in charge of higher education. I was relating with students, the tertiary institutions quite all right, in terms of cultism. That was when cult renunciation was in vogue. We also found out that there were cults in primary schools who took blood oath. And I just wonder, a boy of 8, a boy of 9, what does he know about blood oath? Where did he learn that from? Okay, so the ministries, as I said, should do more, show more commitment, be more passionate about it. In appointing persons to some of these positions, appoint people who are committed. I also know that there is the problem of somebody showing real commitment, writing a report that is considered negative but is the truth. After a while, they'll move that person from that section. And then we return to the same corruption which we are talking about in the country. If I return to I give examples. When, after the essay that came out, I got a lot of responses. Another story that a teacher told me was that a student in a private school here in Lagos called the teacher, "You monkey." The teacher was so infuriated, almost beat up but controlled himself and reported to the principal. The principal then invited the parents to school. That father came in the presence of all teachers. The matter was reported to him. And he said, you dared to call the teacher a monkey? I was planning to send you to Oxford. Now you're not going to Oxford, you go to Birmingham. That's the punishment. And the teacher said, I would like to be punished like that. Yet another teacher said he sent a student to the library, get a book for me. The student misplaced the book. And so the librarian was harassing this teacher. Look, I can't find this book. Where is the book? And the student had the effrontery to walk up to the librarian to say, why are you harassing Mr. Suso for the book? How much is the book anyway? How much? She put her hand in her breast pocket and brought out $100 and gave to the teachers. It's $75. Keep the change. Look, let's train our children at home. These are children from privileged homes who believe that these teachers amount to nothing, that these are teachers, that they can pay the teachers, so they don't even respect the teachers. Parents, train your children. That kind of attitude will not profit them in life when they leave the school environment. That sense of entitlement. So the Ministry of Education should have all of this information. That is the reason I said, let there be a hearing, a public hearing, not to indict people, not to punish people, because once you say you want to punish people, you want to indict, people will clam up. What will say, look, let there be an open discussion on this, perhaps by a House of Assembly or House of Representatives, and let people come and talk and let them hear of the experiences. Parents will make recommendations. I hear in some of the private schools, PTAs are not allowed. Any private school, any school where a PTA is not allowed should be closed down. How can you say you don't want Parents Teachers Association in your school? So the Ministry of Education has a role to play. Let these guidelines be clearly stated, given to the schools. Let there be more inspectors visiting the schools, not as friends, but as inspectors. And when there are infractions, let people be punished. When you punish people, then people will learn. Others will learn. Thank you.
All right. Thank God, Ocheho. What is the best approach to, changing the thought pattern of a bully, for instance, a child? What should be the approach to ensuring that a child who is a bully stops bullying? How can it happen? Because already when they have been indoctrinated with the bullying ideology, it becomes difficult. It becomes deep-seated in their thought pattern. So what is the best approach to changing the course of thought of a bully?
Okay, thank you very much. I think there's this approach called the CBT approach, where for a child who already have that thought pattern, who believe or have seen bullying as a norm, I think one of the approach that can be used is the thought CBT, where you help the child to be able to, first you identify those irrational beliefs that about bullying. So for instance, if a child believes that bullying is right, there's nothing wrong about it, so you need to do a thorough, interventions for that particular child by first identifying all those negative thought patterns as it regards to bullying. Also, you need to identify the person's beliefs. So you want to identify the person believes about bullying, what the person sees. Is this say anything wrong in being aggressive? Does it say anything wrong? And again, let me say this, that most time when we talk about bullying, people just look at physical aggression. You know, there are different types of bullying. There is verbal bullying, you know, and also cyberbullying that quite a lot of us know about. There's even prejudicial bullying, whereby because somebody is not from your tribe or somebody is not from your particular, doesn't look like you. And also, of course, there's sexual bullying. So there are different types of bullying, so that we don't just concentrate only on physical bullying. But first, we need to identify the thought pattern of that child. What does the person believe about bullying? Is this something that is right or wrong? So the moment we identify that, and we now begin to change it through sensitization, through orientation, because everything begins from the thought. So once the thought is wrong, it affects the emotions, and that determines the action of the child. So once we're able to identify it, which is the first step, we'll now begin to replace that thought with a more positive thought or approach to begin to say, oh, if you believe that bullying is right, then we'll now begin to work on the child to change that thought, so that the child emotion will also be impacted, and also the action will be impacted as a result.
All right. Thank God, Ocheho, child psychologist. Would like to appreciate you for being our guest on Good Morning Nigeria today. Mrs. Charity Nalego, Principal Pacesetters Academy, Guzape in Abuja. Deep thanks for being our guest also on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you, sir.
From our Kaduna Network Center, Professor Hawa Evelyn Yusuf is Professor of Criminology and Gender Studies at Kaduna State University. Thank you very much also for participating into this conversation. Professor Hope Igaga of the University of Lagos and former Commissioner for Higher Education in Delta State. We appreciate your contributions. And last but not the least, Chief Adeolu Ogubanjo, Deputy National President, National Parent Teacher Association of Nigeria, NAPTAN. We appreciate your insights into this conversation, and do hope that we can continue all the steps that are required to attenuate the menace of extreme bullying in our schools. And Kirian, you know, there's also the tremendous advantage at those formative years when you strike up a healthy relationship with a senior or even with your mates. Those things will last you a lifetime. A lifetime, no question about it. I mean, we don't want to get into details. I have my school father. We are friends up to this moment, almost family now, as almost 50 years going on. All right, so that does it for our conversation segment. And let's see if we can take one or two of our segments, sports or foreign.
The newly appointed Burkinabe Prime Minister, Lassina Zerbo, has outlined some of the issues he intends to solve in the country just after the selection of various ministerial dockets. The new Prime Minister said Burkina Faso now needs to face the reality by solving issues like terrorism that have been the main concern for the West African country. The new Prime Minister further reiterated the need to tackle and reduce the cost of living in a country where unemployment has been a major challenge for years. Lassina Zerbo is relatively unknown to most Burkinabes, but has gained some recognition abroad for his efforts towards banning nuclear explosive testings. South Korea says it will reimpose curfews on businesses and tighten social distancing rules as the number of COVID-19 infections and severe cases reach record highs. The measures come a month and a half after the South Korean government eased restrictions under a living with COVID-19 policy. But with new daily infections soaring and healthcare workers warning of mayhem at hospitals, the government has come under increased pressure to roll back the policy. Under the new rules, gatherings are limited to no more than 4 people as long as they are fully vaccinated. Restaurants, cafes, and bars will also need to close by 9 p.m., and movie theaters and internet cafes by 10 p.m. Unvaccinated people can only dine out alone or use takeout or delivery services. Daily numbers of cases shot past 7,000 for the first time last week, just days after surpassing the 5,000 mark.
All right, let's take a bit of sports.